guest, Pranil, aka the Laterizer from the FPL Wire Pod. Pranil, first question, how tough was that selling Mo Salah?
Oh, it was tough, but I'm giving myself some comfort because I have a wildcard that I have planned in Gameweek 8. So just the two fixtures that I need to see off, Crystal Palace away and Chelsea away. Palace have won 17 on the trot in all competitions. So I'm hoping that he stays quiet for a couple of weeks.
You're hoping that he stays quiet, but you're nervous, aren't you?
Very nervous.
Sam, very quickly, you've also sold him as part of your wildcard, haven't you? How nervous are you?
I'm all right because I've brought in another Liverpool attacking asset, so I don't feel quite so bad at having lost Salah, but it's never a nice feeling to be without one of the best players in the game.
OK, if we take a look at their stats so far, Sam, are we understanding why people are making this move? It's the expected goal involvement that, to me, just really stands out.
Yeah, the underlying data for Haaland is so far superior to Salah in the opening weeks of the season. He's just been so integral to everything that Manchester City are doing, whereas at Liverpool, it hasn't been about Salah, it's been about others, Gakpo, Ekitike, other assets that have kind of come to the fore instead of Salah. And if you want to buy Haaland, you have to make a big sacrifice because he's going to cost you big money, and you can understand, therefore, why people are choosing to take out Salah rather than take a -8 or a -12 and disrupt the rest of their team.
OK, well, we all did get a little bit nervous this week, I think it's safe to say, with Erling Haaland, because he didn't play in the Cup in midweek and he was a little bit of a doubt, but we think he'll be OK because he has now been pictured in training. And I know that lots of FPL managers saw this photo and were mightily relieved. Are you one of those managers, Pranil?
Absolutely. I moved early on Haaland on Sunday, so I was hoping that he would be fit. And this was a sigh of relief because I'm looking to play the triple captaincy chip on him. And it's just good to see him training. Just need a clean sheet from Pep Guardiola in the press conference later today.
Yeah, we've been looking at an entry point for him, and this did feel like the perfect entry point, didn't it really, Sam? Because against newly promoted clubs, Erling Haaland tends to really deliver.
Yeah, he has a really good record against the newly promoted sides. And actually, if you look at the fixture run that Manchester City have after this, it's not just this game at the weekend against Burnley. They continue to have great fixtures. So if you are investing in Haaland now, you've got him not just for the perfect fixture this week, but for the long term as well.
Yes, 16 goals in 15 games, plus 3 assists as well. This fixture this weekend, Pranil, looks prime for, well, I was going to say a big haul, but probably a blank knowing our luck so far this season. But it does look like he could get a big haul.
He does. I mean, he's got a full week's rest as well. Burnley, both times they've travelled, they've conceded 3 goals to United as well as Spurs. So I'm hoping that it pays to you. And what I like about Haaland is he's gotten 75% goal involvement when he's on the pitch for Manchester City. So all the chances are getting funneled to him, which is why I'm feeling a little more confident.
Yeah, I totally understand. And Pranil mentioned it briefly before. Do you understand why people are potentially activating their triple captainship on him as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Burnley are the team in the league that have been expected to concede the most goals so far this season. Nearly 10.5 goals that they've been expected to concede. That's a lot more than anybody else. So you can understand why, given his record against the newly promoted teams, given how important he's been to that City team, and given Burnley's defensive record so far, you want to play the triple captain.
With our chips, we know how many chips we're going to have this season. Of course, we've got a couple more now with the chips in the first half and the second half of the season, but we do have to plan very carefully. At what point did you decide this was the fixture, and were there any other considerations that came into mind for when you were going to play it?
I'm a big believer in form, and Haaland has been putting them at the back of the net. If you see, last season also he was getting so many chances, but he was second-guessing himself when it came to finishing those chances. So I believe when it comes to a striker, he needs to be in a good frame of mind, which he is at the moment. He's had a week's stress. There is no European distraction. He's fit now. This might change next week. So at the moment, I want to triple captain him.
When you take a look at those, is Erling Haaland primed for your triple captain at some point? Have you earmarked when you might play it?
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it, where you, in playing the wild card, I knew it was going to rule me out of the triple captain for this week because you can't play both at the same time. And that was one of the things that nearly put me off the wild card. But there are plenty of other opportunities. OK, plenty of opportunities for your wild card. Well, plenty of opportunities later in the programme to talk to Pranil as well. Thank you very much. We'll be back with you very shortly. Well, for our poll this week, we're actually going to focus on the triple team question. Obviously, you might not be able to play it if, like Sam, you're wild carding this week, or if you've already used it. But we do want to know, if you had the triple captain chip available to you this week, would you use it on Erling Haaland at home to Burnley? You can scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen to cast your vote. We're going to check in on the standing at the end of the show. And as always, we're going to leave the poll up until the deadline passes so you can vote whether you were watching us on the show. OK then, Sam, let's quickly now chat about a couple of forwards, because Hugo Ekitike is now suspended because he was sent off in the Cup in midweek, which means it does look like Alexander Isak will get his first start in the Premier League. As a wildcarder,
Spoiler, he's in your team, isn't he? How much
is.
did Tuesday night and that decision with Ekitike change that?
Entirely. So up until I think it was about 9:47 in the evening when Ekitike got that red card, I did not have Isak in my team, and I had no thoughts to have him either. I'd kept Mo Salah up until that point because I wanted to stay invested in Liverpool. As soon as that red card happened, I thought, well, there's an opportunity here now because Ekitike can't play in game week 6. Isak, we've seen and we've heard from Slot that he's probably not ready for the full 90 minutes. That's a little bit off-putting, but if he can get 60 or 70 at the weekend, would assume therefore that probably Ekitike gets to start in the Champions League. Then maybe Isak is back in for the start in game week 7 as well. It feels like a long, I might be having to play the patient game, but Isak just feels like a really good opportunity, particularly when you look at his record that he had when he was at Newcastle.
Are you not going to be worried from game week 7 and every week onwards? Because, of course, Liverpool got other competitions as well, including the Champions League. Are you going to be worrying each week about his starts?
There is always a bit of a worry. I think, we have it at other clubs as well when we talk about the risk of rotation, but I don't think you do a club record fee for a player to sit them on the bench most weeks. I think even if he comes off the bench, we've seen that for Newcastle in the past, that, he can come off the bench and still get goals, plenty of them. So for me, he just feels like a player that I want to own long term. So I'm going to go a bit early and hope that he does what he's supposed to do, and then we get a load of price rises too.
OK, well, one of the key decisions that people on wildcards might have had to make is whether to put him or Victor Gyökeres into their team. Did you consider the Arsenal frontman?
Yeah, absolutely. And this was one of the big decisions for me because obviously Gyökeres is slightly cheaper than Isak as well, so that helps with the budget and spreading it around. The fixtures are, I think, significantly nicer for Arsenal than they are for Liverpool when you look at them in conjunction as a run. The thing that slightly puts me off Gyökeres is that so far he's been really, really good in the games where they've been sort of green fixtures on the fixture tick, the ones that Arsenal are expected to win by quite a long way. And in the more difficult fixtures, he's kind of been not so much in the game. I think for me, I'm looking at a different route to investing in Arsenal, and I'm looking at one of their midfielders instead. But I do think there is an opportunity, particularly if you go for Isak, to downgrade to Gyökeres later if it looks like actually I've made the wrong call.
I wonder who that Arsenal midfielder could be. And timely, we're actually going to turn our attention to the midfield now. So let's bring in another guest. It's Abdul, aka FPL Salah from Fantasy Football Hub. Abdul, you are not on a wild card, but have you noticed there's a bit of a template midfield forming for everyone now?
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you look at the most transferred in midfielders this week, Antoine Semenyo, he's out at the top, and it's no surprise he's been a bit of a revelation this season. But the other options are quite interesting. Ranger's been a really good option. He's played 90 minutes in all 5 games so far, and he's playing in an attacking steady team. And those next 3 fixtures for them are great. And then Bruno Fernandes and Erling Haaland are just, in the current landscape, they look like perfect midfielders, right? Because they can get DEFCON points. They're nailed to start and on penalties, and they're just kind of the talisman for the teams. So yeah, there is a template for them, but I think there's good reason for that.
OK, we're not going to talk about Antoine Semenyo because it feels like we've spoken about him in depth on every single show this season. He is the most owned. So many midfields now have him. But in terms of the other ones there, Bruno Fernandes is an interesting one because his ownership is creeping up. He's 9 million. But do you understand why people are looking at him?
Yeah, because it's not just the assist potential that he has. I mean, he's far and away when you look at the underlying stats for that, but it's the defensive contribution points that are racking up for him as well. He's already got 4 of them. And actually, he's registered 55 defensive contributions over the opening 5 games of the season. So he's actually been unlucky maybe not to register more DEFCON points over the first 5 matches. It's 11 more than anyone else, by the way. So that's a significant amount. I think, he's the 11th most defensive contributions in the league. So yeah, I think for me, he is a player that I would really like to have. The 9 million price point is really quite a difficult number to get to if you want to have Haaland and if you want a Saka or somebody else along those lines. But I can see the value in him for sure. It's just how far do we see him in that more defensively minded role? Whereas I'd rather have my 9 million attacker in an attacking position.
There are some quite nice fixtures for Manchester United coming up, particularly the next 2. Obviously, it looks a lot trickier in game week 8. But Abdul, have you found another way of trying to maybe capitalise on those fixtures for Manchester United at a slightly cheaper price point?
Yeah, so I think obviously Bruno's a fantastic, reliable option, but I do think Mbeumo is a great option, especially if you can't stretch to Bruno for that 9 million price point. I mean, he's been fantastic. Look, he's gone a bit under the radar because he's only scored 1 goal, but I think he has been quite unlucky not to get more returns. I think after Bruno Fernandes, he's probably the first name on that team sheet for the United attackers. And, we saw what he done last season and the season before. Obviously, he's not got the penalties this season, but I still think he's going to score a fair few goals for them. I think he's going a bit under the radar.
A quick word on one of the other names on that list that we saw at the beginning, Ilman Ndiaye, 6.5 million at Everton. Is he someone that you've looked at? Do you understand the interest in him?
Absolutely, particularly with this week. It's a really attractive fixture against West Ham. After that, the Everton fixtures are a little bit more mixed, and that kind of puts me off a little bit. There's obviously a game against Man City in there, there's a game against Spurs in there. They get a little bit more challenging, but at 6.5 million, he is offering incredible value for money and a nice route to point set with him as well. So if you don't want to go for a Jack Grealish, you absolutely can go for Ndiaye. I think he's a really, really nice option.
OK, so we've taken a look at the most transferred in for Game Week 6. But Sam, you did say in the last section on the programme that you weren't going with an Arsenal forward because you were going with an Arsenal midfielder.
Yep.
That Arsenal midfielder is?
Bukayo Saka.
Yes, and it looks like his minutes are being managed, so he's getting back to fitness. Do you feel like, are you surprised potentially that people aren't talking about him, or do you think people are just waiting to see more from him before they invest?
I think partly it's the Newcastle game this week that's putting a lot of people off because Newcastle have been incredibly solid defensively so far this season, but the fixture run for Arsenal after that is phenomenal. And I think, a couple of weeks ago when Noni Madueke was playing so well, maybe there would have been a little bit more resistance from me for going there. But with his injury now, I'd expect Saka to be quite quickly back and integral in that team. We don't yet know about penalties. Probably Gyökeres has them, but let's see how that pans out. We still have set pieces from Saka. So for me, he's only 9.8 as well at the moment, and I can only see him going up in price. So I wanted to get on there early before he cost me too much more money.
And sometimes it's easier to go down, isn't it, rather than to go up to play, particularly when you're on a wild card. OK, but if we are going to want all these really expensive midfielders, which we all want, and of course we all want Erling Haaland too, then we are going to need some cheaper midfielders. So probably timely that we check in on this graphic. Anton Stack, 5 million, is probably the headline here, I think it's safe to say. Abdul, do you understand the interest in him?
Definitely. I mean, look, he's only 5 million. He's on corners and he's on free kicks. He's played 90 minutes in all 5 games, so I can definitely see the appeal there. And Leeds are looking like a really good side. I think a lot better than most expected. And yeah, there's not much to like. Look, he's 5 million. He's not going to get 10 goals and 10 assists, but he's going to provide a steady stream of points. He's probably going to be your 4th or 5th midfielder. He's just such a reliable option.
And spoiler, I think you might feature in Sam's wildcard. We'll check in on that in part 2, but it is time for us to take a break right now. We'll be back with lots more wildcard chat in just a couple of minutes. See you then. Welcome back to the Fancy Show. We're getting ready for Game Week 6. Everyone seems to be very busy in the transfer market, so let's say hello again to Sam, who's in the studio with me, and Pranil and Abdul, who've also joined us, because now we're going to discuss some defenders. Firstly, guys, why don't we start off by looking at the top scoring defenders in the game? And if we take a look, Trevor Chalobah actually tops the list here. Marcus Senesi, we've spoken about him a lot on the programme, it feels like. He's in second, then Mark Gahey, then a couple of Arsenal defenders and a Newcastle defender. What stands out to you in that list, Sam?
I mean, I think Senesi is just incredible value for money still at the price point that he is. Gahey looks phenomenal, but the Palace fixtures are about to swing for the more difficult, and he does overachieve his XG at the moment and expected assists as well. So maybe he's been a little bit fortunate. It's interesting to me that the 2 Arsenal boys that are there are not the 2 most expensive of the Arsenal defenders. It's not the Gabriels and the Slebers, but we have seen Timber and Calafiori do particularly well in specific games, and that has kind of skewed their data. But I'm not surprised to see any of those guys there because they're all really good fantasy options right now.
OK, I think it's safe to say we're all a little bit obsessed with DEFCON at this point because it's something kind of shiny and exciting that's changed a little bit in the game this season. And Marcus Senesi, I think is it fair for me to call him at this early stage, Abdul, the DEFCON king?
I think we could, yeah, especially due to his price. He's started at 4.5 million. Even though he's gone up by 0.3, I still think he's great value. And I think obviously Tarkowski's great as well, but he is 5.5, and then Joachim Andersen at 4.5, another great value option. I mean, if you look at that list, I mean, it's just full of budget defenders, and I think that kind of just shows how the game's changed this season. And I think Senesi is the king at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly making centre-backs a lot more interesting, isn't it? And even kind of looking at midfielders who are getting DEFCON points as well. Do you own any of those, Pranil? Who's kind of stood out to you in these early weeks?
Unfortunately, I don't. I mean, we live in a world where Munoz is not as good a pick as Richards or Lacroix at the moment. So I'm looking to wildcard in Gameweek 8 and get a few of these DEFCON defenders.
Yeah, I've got Senesi and I bought him in this week. We knew that Tarkowski was going to be brilliant as well. Joachim Andersen's been another one at 4.5 million, as Abdul briefly touched on. I've had him in my team. And even when Fulham haven't been keeping clean sheets, he's getting the points.
And it makes a massive difference because in the past, when the clean sheet has gone, you've kind of gone, 2-pointer unless they happen to pick up an assist. But now the DEFCON thing is really important because then you're doubling the points that they potentially can get if they've lost the clean sheet. So for me, that has been a real consideration on wildcard, is how many DEFCON monsters can I bring into my team, because it can make a difference between a red and a green arrow.
OK, so that's some of the individual players, particularly when it comes to DEFCON. Let's take a look at the best team defences in the Premier League. And there might not be too many goals scored in the match between Newcastle and Arsenal this weekend if the stats so far are to kind of continue, because they do top it. And it feels like, Pranil, we haven't spoken too much about Newcastle defenders this season. Are we overlooking them a bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think Nick Pope, Dan Burn, both of them have done well. Eddie Howe has shown this season that he's looking to adapt, rotate his defense, rotate his team, and play a little conservative because of the European involvement.
Yeah, and Arsenal second in there. We should know by now, shouldn't we, that Arsenal are brilliant defence. They were brilliant last season, and their fixtures are about to turn for the better too, Abdul.
Yeah, and I think their fixture run from Gameweek 7 is, it can't be ignored. It's so good. And I think even though the defenders like Gabriel and Saliba aren't the best for DEFCON, I do think they're still definitely worth consideration because of, how likely they are to keep a clean sheet and being the best defence in the league. So yeah, it's an interesting one with which Arsenal 3 you go for from Gameweek 7.
Yeah, Sam, who is the best Arsenal defender? Because Gabriel's that little bit more, isn't he?
He's that little bit more, and actually sometimes when you're trying to save budget for expensive premiums, it's hard. I've got Timber, spoiler alert for my wildcard later, because he does have that attacking threat, and we are seeing the potential for DEFCONs with him. And over the good fixtures, I'd expect almost them to get less defensive contributions because the other teams may sit back and try and absorb the pressure rather than coming on to Arsenal. So we'll just see how that pans out. But for me, Timber is the standout of the Arsenal defence.
OK then, guys, I'm going to put you on the spot. Names only, your top 3 defenders in order of preference. Pranil, you first.
Senesi, Gabriel, and Lacroix.
OK, nice. Abdul?
I'll go Senesi, Anderson, Gabriel.
Loves the DEFCON. What about you?
I'll go Senesi, Timber, and then Van der Ven.
Knew there'd be a Spurs player. OK, then it is time for some team reveals now. And we've teed it up all programme. We love it when there's a wildcarder on the show. So let's see Sam's brand new squad. And it literally is pretty much a brand new squad. There's not many survivors from your early weeks team.
No, there isn't. I think there's 4 of them hanging on, and one of them is definitely on the cusp of not being there again. So at the minute, I've tripled up on Arsenal with Raya, Timber, and then, as mentioned before, Saka. I am contemplating still changing Raya for Nick Pope because I do like the Newcastle defence, and their fixtures are nice as well, and I don't have one of them. Senesi and Semenyo I should have had weeks ago, and it's been frustrating that I haven't. So bought them both in and fixed those 2 problems. Kudus is the one that may still disappear. If I do the Raya to Pope move, then Kudus can become Xavi Simons, and I like that move even more because of the set-piece threat that he offers. And then the front 3, I know for a lot of people they'll go Gyökeres, but the front 3 for me kind of pick themselves because I do want to stay invested in the Liverpool attack. And he's more expensive than Gyökeres, so if I want to come down to him, it's easy enough to do that.
And this team as well has been set up with other chips in mind, hasn't it?
Yes. So this team is heavily invested in Leeds because I'm planning a bench boost either in Game Week 8 or in Game Week 9. And the Leeds fixtures are really nice in Game Week 8 and 9. Same with Sunderland. There's a couple of Sunderland there just because I want to make sure that the bench boost is set up nicely.
How set are you?
I think I'm like 90% there. It's literally those 2 positions. Is if I do Raya and Kudus for Pope and Xavi Simons. Otherwise, I'm fairly locked.
Okay, we'll enjoy the next 24 hours or so because I always hate the deadline when you've got a wild card active. OK, then let's take a look at Abdul now. Is your team set? Have you made your transfers already?
Yeah, I don't normally make early transfers, but I have this week because I was going to get priced out. So I took out Salah and Thiago for Semenyo and Haaland. And I quite like my team this week. I was considering wildcarding, but I thought my team this week looked quite good because I've got 2 Forest players there, 2 Spurs at home to Wolves. But yeah, I'm pretty set. I'm just waiting for Pep's press conference to see whether I'm captain Haaland or not.
One selection kind of thing I wanted to talk to you about there. You're starting Paquetá, but you're not starting Virs.
Yeah, I just think with Paquetá, he's there for 90 minutes. Well, mostly he's likely to play 90 minutes. He is a penalty taker. I know Everton away is a tough fixture, but with Wirtz, I just think even if he starts, I think he's kind of gone down the pecking order in the sense that he might, I wouldn't be surprised if he's taken off in 60 minutes or something like that. So I don't like his minutes. And Palace away is a game anyway. It's they've been fantastic, as panel mentioned earlier in the show. So not too confident in Wirtz just now.
Yeah, it's not very often, though, that you see teams without any Liverpool attack, is it? OK, then finally, let's take a look at Pranil's side. And you've already made your transfers as well.
Yeah, just like Abdul, I got in Haaland on Sunday, and I got Mbeumo along with him. Mbeumo and Cunha, a little bit of a double United attack because they've got good fixtures this week and next. I didn't go for Bruno Fernandes because that leaves me room to get in Bukayo Saka for Wirtz should I want him next week before wildcarding in Game Week 8.
Is there a chance you could wildcard this week? Any chance at all?
Not after the Haaland training image.
OK, so you were waiting to see that, like lots of FPL managers, and you've got a couple of players there on your bench that could play, but I guess Liverpool is a tough fixture for Munoz. OK, then it is time to consider the captaincy. Let's not waste time here, everyone. Haaland?
Yeah.
Abdul, Haaland?
Yeah.
Pranil?
Yeah, it's just whether 2 or 3 of them.
Yes, I understand. If you could triple captain this week, would you?
I'd be really tempted to, yeah, but I'm locked out of that. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? But I think if I had the option, I would have done it.
Were you tempted at all, Abdul? Because you don't have your wildcard active.
Yeah, no, look, if Pep says Haaland is training, the triple comes on.
Oh, really? So you're literally just waiting on word from Pep, but he's not exactly known for giving us team news, is he?
No, but I think if he says he's trained, I think that'll be good enough for me. Because we already seen training photos of him, and unless he comes out and says something really negative, then that's the only reason. That's the way I won't activate it.
OK, let's take a look at our poll results then, because a reminder is a little bit different because we're not asking you for the captaincy option this week. We're asking you if your triple captain chip was available, would you use it on Haaland? And yes, 63% of managers, as it stands, are saying that they would do that. So that's something that Pranil's going to do. But 37% of managers are saying no. Do you think that's because they've earmarked another time, or do you think it's just... Well, actually, no, because we're saying if it's available.
I wonder if either people might be thinking that there's still a flag there. I'm a little bit cautious. Maybe there's a rotated amount of minutes, given it's the Champions League week next week. And maybe people are thinking after the Burnley-Liverpool game the other week, well, Burnley did sit in for a long time and frustrate Liverpool, so maybe they'll try and do the same against City. And maybe there's another game week coming up in the future, like they've got West Ham coming up. Maybe I'll target that instead.
Abdul, if you didn't have Erling Haaland and around half of the games still don't have him, who would be the next best option, would you say?
I think Bruno Fernandes. I think Brentford away is a fantastic fixture. And he's probably the second best option in isolation. But if you don't have Haaland, a lot of the guys won't have Haaland and will have Salah, and I still think he's a great option. I mean, Salah hasn't just suddenly turned into a bad player, so he's an option there as well for the captaincy.
Very quickly, Sam, who would you go with?
Do you know what? If I had Richarlison, I'd be really tempted at home to Wolves this weekend. I think that Spurs look decent. So if you want to go for differential and you've got him, I think he wasn't bad.
OK, this is really weird because I'm the only Mo Salah owner out of 4 of us on this show. I don't think this has ever happened, has it? Guys, the very best of luck. Let's all hope Mo Salah goes crazy. I'm joking. Have a great game week, everyone. A reminder, the deadline is on Saturday at 11 a.m. UK time. If you're using a chip, please remember to press the button. And as always, even more this week, good luck. We'll see you next week, guys. Bye-bye.